Did you know that Christine Fury was turned into a Frankenstein monster? Or how about the fact that not a single Ferrari was used in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? But this is just the beginning. There are so many other cars that you can only see on the movie screen, like the Dodge Ramcharger. Dodge Ramcharger. There isn't a person alive who's watched Lone Wolf McQuade and forgotten the scene in the dirt. McQuade gets beaten, buried alive in the truck by villains, then cracks open a beer, and with a flick of a switch on its Hollywood supercharger, drives it straight out of the dirt. But as iconic as it might have been, it hasn't been seen since the movie finished filming. Now, the car that Chuck Norris drove on the set couldn't actually do that because there's no car in existence that can drive through dirt. But it did craft a lasting legacy that we still talk about. That 1982 Dodge Ramcharger fits McQuade's lone wolf, tough-as-nails persona perfectly. Just like Chuck Norris's character, it's big, gritty, and refuses to stay down, just like him. The SUV isn't just some dusty SUV in an 80s action flick. It's basically an extension of McQuade himself, a rugged Texas Ranger who lives by his own rules. In the movie, McQuade's Ramcharger is a big, burly, two-door 4x4 SUV built by Dodge, the kind that competed with the Ford Bronco and Chevy K5 Blazer back in the day. There isn't a single original Ramcharger that the fans or collectors have tracked or preserved over the years. So you can't visit it in a museum like you can Marty McFly's DeLorean, which now sits at the Peterson Automotive Museum in LA, and it smashes that like button, just like you should, if you haven't done so already. But in all seriousness, the Ramcharger was never preserved or displayed like famous cars from other films. But we don't know if the truck was deliberately destroyed by the studio either. We just know that Hollywood often uses multiple vehicles for stunts, and then sells them off after filming, meaning individual trucks were likely dispersed, modified, or scrapped over time. Steve McQueen's Bullet. For decades, everyone thought that Steve McQueen's Bullet was lost forever, but as luck would have it, it resurfaced once again. The Bullet was a Highland Green 1968 Ford Mustang GT 390 fastback with a 4-speed manual and V8 power through the streets. The famous movie chase was filmed practically with no CGI. It was just the Mustang's raw muscle, and the way McQueen lets it roar up and down hills instantly cemented the car as a legend. What makes it so cool isn't just the rumble of its 390 cubic engine, or how it grips San Francisco's steep hills, it's how the Mustang became Frank Bullitt's partner in justice. The car was all bark and attitude, just like McQueen's calm, tough guy persona. In our mind, Steve McQueen couldn't drive any other car, and for some reason, everyone believed that the car was lost forever. However, that wasn't exactly true. You see, 2 Mustangs were used. The first one was so heavily damaged during stunt driving that it was scrapped, but the other slipped into private ownership. For 4 decades, people thought the car was lost forever. But in reality, this beast spent over 40 years hidden in a family garage before finally resurfacing in 2018, and was even sold at auction for millions because of its cultural significance. Because it was essentially out of public view for so long and wasn't on display in a museum, many assumed it had disappeared forever. But it survived, just out of sight from most of the world for decades. 58 Plymouth Fury. In Christine, the possessed car that haunts poor Arnie Cunningham is supposed to be a red and white 1958 Plymouth Fury. But the real story behind that eerie ride is even stranger. The 1958 Fury was a classy Mopar with a big V8 that made it cool enough on its own. But Stephen King's novel and John Carpenter's 1983 movie turned it into one of the most instantly recognizable horror movie vehicles ever. So Christine became a character whose supernatural presence warps Arnie from shy kid to obsessed wreck restorer, perfectly echoing the movie's dark teen drama vibe. Getting that car on film was tricky, because the real-world 58 Fury was rare. Only about 5,303 were built, and they only came in beige and gold. So the production bought a bunch of Plymouth Belvederes and Savoys and made them look like a Fury. They used around 24 cars, and most of them were destroyed or scrapped after filming, because the story called for crashes, fires, and even scenes where she literally falls apart and rebuilds herself. Because so many of the movie cars were smashed up for stunts, there isn't a car that survived the set. But wait, what about the one at the Peterson Automotive Museum in Los Angeles? Well, they're not the original car. Sure, they might have parts left in them from the cars used on the set, but they're these Frankenstein monster revivals. All of the cars that supposedly made it through have been restored. Basically, they are ordinary 58 Plymouth Furies that have a few parts from the original Christine. But based on how evil that car was, it's not so bad. Alpine White 1970 Dodge Challenger RT. In the 1971 cult classic Vanishing Point, Kowalski is tasked with delivering this big block Mopar from Denver to San Francisco, And the car's raw 440 cubic inch V8 and 4-speed manual make it perfect for blasting across the wide, empty roads of the American West at breakneck speed. The endless horizon and the engine's roar visually mirror Kowalski's inner quest for meaning, making the car almost a character in itself. Since then, the white 1970s Dodge Challenger RT has become an icon in its own right. And it isn't just the sleek alpine white paint and aggressive stance. It was because this was actually a stock, just as you might find at a dealer back then. Chrysler lent several of these RTs to the production, and they were pushed hard through real stunts. At the end of the filming, all of the Challengers were returned to Chrysler, and most were so beaten up from filming that they were likely dismantled or crushed rather than preserved. 1961 Ferrari 250 GT Spider, California. What if I told you that there was never a Ferrari in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? In fact, not a single Ferrari was destroyed while filming the movie. That's because of how rare the 250 GT California Spider actually is. Besides being one of the most beautiful and rare sports cars ever made by Ferrari, it also features a sleek convertible body, a glorious V12, and only about 100 were ever built in the late 1950s and early 1960s, which has made it one of the most collectible cars in history. Because genuine 250 GT Californias were so rare and extremely expensive, a real one was worth hundreds of thousands in the 1980s and now goes for many millions. The production didn't risk one for filming action scenes. Instead, they commissioned 3 Modena GT Spider California replicas built by Modena Design and Development to look like the Ferrari for nearly all of the wide and stunt shots, and brought a real California in only for very tight close-ups. So, if you're looking for the 1961 Ferrari 250 GT Spider California at a museum, you'll never find one. You might find the Modena, but not a Ferrari. Bluesmobile. The 1974 Dodge Monaco Bluesmobile from the Blues Brothers is one of those movie cars that feels like a character almost as much as Jake and Elwood themselves. Dan Aykroyd, who co-wrote the movie, specifically picked the Dodge Monaco with its 440 Magnum V8 and squad car package because he thought it was the hottest car used by police during the 1970s, giving the Bluesmobile both real muscle and a tongue-in-cheek personality that fits Elwood's calm, quirky style. The film famously bought a whole fleet of used California Highway Patrol Dodge Monacos, 13 of them, to portray the Bluesmobile, each tailored for different stunts like jumps, chases, or one rigged to fall apart spectacularly at the end. And if you want to find one of them today, you can't because the production practically destroyed them all. With over 60 police cars used and more than 100 vehicles wrecked during filming, the cars were worked hard and most never survived the stunts or were scrapped when shooting wrapped. 1985 Buick Wildcat. Unveiled at the 1985 SEMA show, the 1985 Buick Wildcat was a sleek, mid-engine, all-wheel drive coupe with a carbon fiber and fiberglass body that looked more spaceship than Buick sedan. It even had a bubble-style acrylic canopy that lifted up with the steering wheel to let you in, which was wildly different from anything else Buick was building at the time. Buick teamed with McLaren to craft a high-performance version of their 3.8-liter V6 with dual overhead cams and sequential fuel injection, and the concept could theoretically accelerate with supercar-level gusto and hit nearly 180 miles per hour in its wildest form. But unlike production cars that get driven, restored, and traded around the world, the 1985 Wildcat never disappeared into car collector legend, since Buick built just 2 examples: a non-functional showpiece and a working prototype. Buick Wildcats. Something similar happened to Buick about 3 decades earlier. The 3 Buick Wildcats from the 1950s are a quirky slice of Motorama history. These were dream cars that Buick showed off to wow the public with radical styling rather than real production plans. Buick's Wildcat. I debuted in 1953 as a sleek fiberglass concept with a powerful V8 and dramatic lines meant to hint at future Buick styling, followed by the even flashier Wildcat II in 1954, then the more luxurious 4-seat Wildcat III in 1955. Today, only the first 2 are known to survive and are preserved in collections and museums. The third Wildcat's fate is murky. Some suggest it was likely scrapped after its show duties, like many concept cars whose upkeep wasn't justified once the spotlight moved on. And despite rumors of secret collections, no confirmed Wildcat III has resurfaced. Chrysler Norseman. But before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you like the video so far. Built in 1956 as a one-off concept car by Chrysler's design team under Virgil Exner and crafted at the Italian coach builder Ghia, it featured a futuristic, pillarless, cantilevered roof and sleek fastback lines that were way ahead of their time. The real twist in its tale is how it vanished from existence. After 15 months of work and a hefty cost, the sole Norseman was crated for shipment from Turin to New York aboard the Italian ocean liner SS Andrea Doria. In July 1956, the Andrea Doria collided with another ship in heavy fog and sank, taking all its cargo with it, including the Norseman. Though divers later spotted the wreck in the 1990s, the car had corroded into indistinguishable debris on the ocean floor, with only tires and hubcaps left to confirm its identity. Thanks for watching. Here's another video car enthusiasts loved watching.